Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Campfire Show. Today we have my friend Adam Martin from Kent Design Build. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Doug.
Who hails from lovely Covington, Louisiana. And here on the show, we share stories and wisdom and marshmallows. And today we're going to ask the question, is the church better or worse than it was January 1st? But before we jump into that, we like to do something kind of goofy here, which is just a fun little show and tell time. So we ask people to bring just something from their office or their car or on their body somewhere. And Adam, are you prepared for show and tell time? And if so, what did you bring us today?
So I've kind of not upon request, but it seems like I've become like this connoisseur of collecting grass. And I was looking through my office when we were talking about what I was going to show, and I found this jar. So I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
But inside this jar, you can see there's some grass in there, and you can actually see there's some paint on it, some yellow paint. This is actually grass from the center field Eye of the Tiger in LSU Stadium back in 2001. The year of 9/11, actually. There was a game that was scheduled on September 15th that actually was postponed into December. And LSU played Auburn. And when Auburn came out on the field, they kind of stomped on the center of the Eye of the Tiger as kind of, rivalry. And so LSU went on to win that game 27-14. So anyway, somebody gave me some. They got some grass from that game in the Eye of the Tiger. He gave it to me in this jar. So I've had it in my office ever since, and I really don't ever look at it. But I thought it was something cool.
Yeah.
And so fast forward now, 2020, where we're at today. Obviously, LSU's had this historic season, and I sent you a photo. This is right outside of my office window, and It's this random piece of sod, right?
Yeah.
And so postseason, LSU decided to resod a section of the field, and one of my family members actually went into the stadium and they were giving it away, collected this piece of sod for me. So this is the sod from this past season's historic team that they played on, and so now it's right outside my office window playing it. So
yeah, that's cool.
Something interesting.
Well, I have the more shows that we do, the more pressure is on me to keep providing new pieces. But today, with my time for you, I brought this, which is one of my first cars, was a 65 Chevy Impala, which I spent a whole bunch of time and money on making really cool. And then I proceeded to total it when I was like 16. And so totally wrecked it, had to get rid of it. But this is the actual center piece from my steering wheel of my 65 Chevy Impala.
Cool.
So that's my item today. But so we're going to jump into it. Again, I'm anxious to hear your wisdom and stories because you've got great experience with the church. But before we do that, just tell us a little bit about who is Adam Martin and maybe a little bit about your family and what you do at your company.
Yeah. So I live, as you said, Covington, Louisiana is home for me. My wife, Katie, we've been married now for going on 9 years, and we have 2 children. A 5-year-old little girl and a 3-year-old little boy. And we've actually got one on the way. So our family.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Our family's growing. The Lord's just blessed us. And so life is busy for us. Professionally, I get the privilege to work for a respected general contractor, a design build firm here in the Gulf South of the U.S. We serve churches really primarily Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. But we consult and lead churches really all over. And so what I get to do there is literally just have conversations with pastors day in, day out, and just help them to think through their ministry, plan their ministry. And when it comes around space, revolving around space, how does their ministry and space come into balance to create space that their ministries can thrive and flourish? And so I literally get to be a part of ministry planning every day with churches of all sizes, small and large. And meet folks all over the country, really. I've gotten to be great friends and partners with you guys through that journey over the last, over a decade probably now.
Yeah. So you're a great resource for the church. And I remember one of one of the good things that are good memories with you is the Plumb Line conference that we did down in your home state there. And one good memory of you, and I can't remember if I shared this with you before or not, but one of my best dessert memories ever was at that conference. And so I was introduced to this thing called bread pudding. Now for my friends in the North, this is not pudding. It's not pudding, right? It's pudding, right? And I learned that, and I was in a fairly formal setting at that conference, and somebody handed me this food, and I'm a real picky eater, and so I took it, and I didn't want to eat it there in the room because I didn't want people to see my reaction because I was sure I would hate it, and so I took it to my room, and I ate it all by myself, and it was amazing. And then I was too ashamed to go back downstairs and get more. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's a South Louisiana, New Orleans classic.
Right there. Man, that's some good stuff. But again, the reason we do this is to inspire churches. So let's dig in. Think back to 2019, the end of 2019, which in some ways seems like yesterday, and in some ways it seems like it was a lifetime ago. But the end of 2019, we're all looking at New Year's resolutions, and we're looking at 2020 as the year of vision and all this stuff that's coming up, and none of us knew what was around the corner, right? So I wonder just what you see, as you interact with churches and pastors and leaders, and how are they doing? What kind of questions are they asking you? What's going on out there?
Yeah, it has been obviously such an uncertain and interesting time in the life of churches and the life of history for people all over. As you alluded to it, this year obviously was a major milestone year for a lot of churches in planning and casting vision. I mean, 2020, you can't dream that up any better. And so they had a lot of goals set in place and a lot of strategic plans set in place. And in many cases, a lot of those plans were just halted, as you can imagine. But I still believe the church is better, in my opinion, because of what's happened in the last, several weeks. Despite a lot of their plans, especially Easter, this climax for churches all over on an annual calendar, despite not being able to gather together live together, I've heard some really incredible stories, and I've witnessed a lot of folks. It's sad to say that we took for granted in a lot of times the freedom in meeting together, and so because of this separation, there's been a real hunger that's kind of risen up in a lot of folks' hearts and lives and families. And, we now recognize how precious gathering together is. What a lot of folks around the world, maybe in other places, experience regularly, the lack of meeting together. We now here in America have gotten a taste of that. And so I believe that because of that, priorities have kind of shifted for a lot of families, and they may now, even churches, I think they've started to self-evaluate and get back to some of the basics, the fundamentals of ministry, and reaching their communities, thinking outwardly, not waiting for the church or the community rather to come to them, but really have an intentionality about reaching their community and kind of take all the handcuff stuff and just really pursue reaching others.
How is that changing maybe the conversations that churches are coming to you with? You design and you build churches. So you're having those conversations all the time, and you've had those for years and years and years. In the last couple months, are those conversations the same, different? How are they changing maybe?
Yeah, they're a little different. It's still a little early right now. There's so many people that are curious as to how are we going to respond when we can gather together again. What are people going to do or not do? But I think what's common thread through all those is that, we are relational people. We were designed to be in relationship and created to be in relationship. And so there's a part of our spirit that can't be removed from that. So I do think that when the church gathers back together, as pastors that I've had conversations with, they lead and plan, they're going to do a lot of the similar things they've always done as far as being intentional with relationships. But when it comes to being live and the measures they're going to put in place, I think it's just going to be smarter, and it'll be a little different. I have had conversations where, the seating capacities of rooms will probably look a little different, where a room that used to seat 1,000 or 500 now seat a small fraction of that, because people may have distances between them and spread out. And so what we've always said is the 80% rule, room is full, that may be 70, that may be 65. And so it's kind of hard to predict what that'll be like. But the conversation we've also had is digital infrastructure is rising to the top, and not just in the main sanctuary or auditorium, but really every space now is critical for that. So pastors are now asking for spaces that they can have things like this. Hey, I need to be able to get in front of a camera midweek and send a message to my congregation, and I need a room or a small spot where I can have lighting, video, audio quality, to be able to stay engaged. It's no longer, I think, about attendance. They're talking about engagement and really what that looks like in so many forms.
Yeah. So you mentioned relationship somewhere in there, and one of the things, like besides you being a business leader and a construction guy and a design guy, you're also just a regular dad and husband and Sunday school teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I think when I was a kid, Sunday school was a given, right? It was just we always did it. We always went to church Sunday night. We always went to church Wednesday night. And in a lot of places that's gone now. It's just we have worship service Sunday morning, and you're kind of pushing things to get commitment for that even.
Sure.
So you as a Sunday school teacher, how are you guys at your church? How are you adapting to all this stuff? And I imagine your Sunday school class is probably a tight knit group of people and just kind of going through life together.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really been encouraged as a teacher and a small group leader in this time of how committed our families have been. As I mentioned earlier, we all have that desire to meet together. So that hasn't changed. So we've been meeting digitally like many other churches have, and I've been teaching digitally just like this. And we've had, the same probably attendance that we had prior to all this. On any given week, we've got 12 to 15 couples easy that log in. And what we've now had is not just the couples, but, little ones. And so all of a sudden one will pop in the background in the middle of the class. So we haven't necessarily seen a decline or a lack of health there, but it's even risen up. I know for our church particularly, this was a big year. Some goals that we had to really expand our reach in small groups. And what's been interesting is that instead of waiting for families to come, now we've been able to go to them. And so I've actually seen folks that haven't come in over a year because of a life event, a baby's been born or someone's been sick. And now they're actually logging in their home because they can do that more easily.
Right.
It's been really cool to watch.
It's amazing how things have changed, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I don't think it'll go away. I think that honestly, when we get back together, when people have surgery, I could easily see where now we have a setup where they could still at home be recovering, but still log in and be a part of our group. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting day coming forward.
Yeah, we're telling people the same thing, and we're experiencing that. I think people are seeing everything that we've adapted to now is just going to be an augmentation to what we're already doing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a temporary thing.
Right.
It's just an addition.
That's right.
And it's just going to make us stronger. So I
sure,
believe that.
Absolutely.
How about are you seeing any success stories either from other churches or your church of just people that are just doing great things and thriving, during this challenging time?
Yeah. I know for us personally, my family, it was a neat time here prior to Easter, a week that many churches practiced and participated in taking the Lord's Supper, communion. And our church did that digitally, and it was really special and sweet. So for the first time that I can recall, my family unit gathered together and took the Lord's Supper in our living room, along with the rest of the body of the church digitally. And that was a really sweet time that we had together as a church family. It was very informal and just real, So the content I think that a lot of churches are putting out doesn't have to be so polished and edited. It's just real life. And, I've also heard where churches are still doing new membership classes and things like that. They're doing them digitally. And I heard one church had over 100 people log in for that in one setting. And they didn't have nearly 100 people when it was live. Yeah. So a lot of good things are happening. One of the biggest things, though, I think, Doug, that is a little bit harder to measure in the life of churches, but I think that's the family unit. Um, when you've had countless hours together with your family, and now all of a sudden dads don't get up and go to work every day, but they get up and maybe go in their home office and they see their families all day long into the evening. There's a real impact that that's going to have on families long term. And I believe when families are healthier, for the first time, families are gathering around the dinner table, maybe for the first time in a long time. And when families are healthier, I just believe that that's going to make the church thrive and have impact in other ways. So
yeah, I agree. We did at our church, we did Good Friday digitally, of course, but we also had an army of people that delivered the communion elements to people's houses. They dropped them off on their porch.
Wow.
And so, and we obviously we'd never done that before, so that was pretty cool. So we had the pastor, leading everyone online, but then they really had, they had bread and they had the juice, and they did that from their house, and people from our church delivered that to them. So that was cool. But yeah, we're hearing from churches that are actually doing better than ever. There are more people engaged. We have churches that their giving is more than ever. Which that doesn't seem right.
I've heard the same thing.
Right. We have, we're in a similar business to you where we help to build churches, and we have churches that are moving forward with everything because every indicator that they see is positive. Yeah. So it's an interesting, like opposing forces here. You think it would be all bad, but it's not. And so my question of, is the church better or worse, is a trick question, because I believe it's absolutely better. Yeah. I believe it's coming out of this better than ever, and I think we're in the middle of an awakening. That's going to be awesome. Yeah,
I agree totally.
Well, hey man, thanks for coming by. We're gonna end with something goofy here, because I tend to do goofy things. So
sure. I never know with you what you're gonna throw at me.
My final question for you is, what's the most embarrassing fashion trend that you used to rock? So you, as maybe a young Adam Martin, or maybe even a year ago or 10 years ago, but what was something that was embarrassing, but when you did it, you owned it, you rocked that thing?
Yeah. Well, I wish I could say it was like some cool haircut, but I still never had hair, no matter, now or then. But the one of the things that I remember while you're asking me that I rocked, and it's really not even embarrassing because I was still proud of it even this day, but I would never do it again now, is I used to have some black and white wingtip Doc Martin shoes. Yeah. And I used to rock those proud. Yeah. And so
I think you can still do that.
Yeah, I think those days are long gone. My wife would probably laugh at me.
All right. Well, speaking of laughing, I'm going to share mine. I'm going to confess my I have so many, but here's one of them. So when I was probably, I don't know, junior high, whatever age that is, one of my favorite bands, and still one of my favorite bands, was Loverboy. And there was this album cover like this, had the red leather pants. And I was probably like 11 or something. And I could not find red leather pants. So I went somewhere, probably like Sears or something, and I got red Levi corduroys. Wow. And so I thought that was pretty much the same thing, that I could be like the Loverboy guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I can't stop that one.
Yeah. But hey man, thanks for stopping by. I want to toast you with my double marshmallow stick here. So thanks for coming by. If you're watching this, if you know anybody that would be a good guest, hit me up. I'd love to talk to them. And again, the reason that we do this is just to provide some wisdom to the church and inspiration. And I'll close with this. We believe that wisdom is pretty important. And there's a book that talks about it here. Proverbs 16:16 says, "It is better to get wisdom than gold." And we'll see you later.